Hello Horror Hounds. So a few days ago, just as we were getting ready to go to bed, Wishmaster started on the telly. So I said to my other half, just before we go up, let's just check out the first 5 minutes or so, the prologue. You remember the crazy ass stuff that's set in 12th century Persia, where the jinn has got the ear of the Persian king who makes the wishes to see unimaginable wonders, and it turns into a hellfest until the wizard traps the jinn in the gem. So he sat down, we watched the prologue, I turned the telly off, and as we were putting to bed, she said, "So have you got that movie on DVD? I said, "No." She said, "Get it." Typically you'll find 90s horror being summarised as having lost its way, Scream comes along, then a whole slew of Scream clones until your torture porn starts. And that's a little unfair. The 90s is kind of the decade that horror forgot. There was no real overriding sense of quality, to be fair. But there were lots of little experiments, lots of sort of evolutionary dead ends that came to nothing. Weird sort of, so things like Virus, The Relic, Deep Rising, Mimic, crazy ass stuff like that. And I would stick Wishmaster in with those. It's kind of fallen out of favour, fallen out of consciousness. Even at the time, people were sort of kicking it like a little bit of a lame dog. Just so typical of the 90s. It was a little bit of a throwback to the monster movies, practical effects and gore of the 80s. But being the 90s, there was some computer generated morphing in there. Morphing technology was in everything in the 90s. The morphing stuff wasn't that great. Maybe the tongue-in-cheek dark humour of the movie meant that it didn't sit well with the straight down the middle 80s gore movies. But this movie has a real charm all of its own. It's got a genuinely interesting standalone antagonist, the Jinn. Not a Freddy clone, not a Jason clone, not another teeny stab screamer-like. And you know what? Having rewatched it again, it's a hell of a lot of fun. Scary? No. Fun? Hells yes. There are, like a party, like Invited to the Party. It's kind of a party film. It's kind of a horror party film. Invited to the Party. Angus Scrimm, the tall man from Phantasm, reads out the opening crawl. Robert Englund's in there. Tony Todd's in there. Kane Hodder's in there. Reggie Bannister from Reggie from the Phantasm movies has probably one of the best scenes in the movie. Is this the first movie to sort of do the let's get all these famous horror faces in from the 80s, like Universal used to do, like you used to get like in the Black Cat, Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff together, and that used to be a thing. Is this turn of the wheels first movie to get these guys in there? Because it's happening all over the place now. 80s nostalgia now in horror movies is a big thing. And getting your Caroline Williams, getting people from Texas Chainsaw to Hatchet, a prime example. Danielle Harris from the Halloween movies and the like. For this go round, was Wishmaster the first one to sort of try that out? I'm just gonna say yes. You know my favourite cameo in the movie? When Robert Englund is showing the heroine around his archaeological room of wonders. He collects statues of deities that have now fallen out of favour and been forgotten, which is a cool idea for a room. One of the statues there is the Pazuzu statue from The Exorcist. My favourite cameo in Wishmaster is Pazuzu. So yeah, the computer effects scream these days, we are using a computer. But you know what? The practical effects hold up, just like they always do. Put time and effort into decent practical effects and they always look good. Even if you can see it's a guy in a rubber suit, it's a physical suit. It's there. You can light it. You can shoot it. It's a real artifact. So the 90s morphing technology looks awful, but the practical gore is still great. And honestly, there are more than a handful of, oh, damn, moments in this. But all of this and all the cameos and Kane Hodder and Tony Todd and Robert Englund, all of the blood effects, the fantastic character of the djinn, the idea of the temptation and the wishes used against you, even the fantastic realization of the wishes with a healthy dose of irony on most of them, would all fall as to nothing if it weren't for the tent pole of this movie, Andrew Divoff, who comes seemingly out of nowhere to completely inhabit the character of the djinn and Nathaniel, his human form, and just has a ball, and you love him and you love watching him, and the way he squeezes syllables out of words that aren't even there. Make your wishes. Fantastic. Andrew Divoff is the MVP of this film. It's a fun little 80s throwback, 90s artifact that I think's great to stick on with friends and beers. Of course, we all know in this time of division, fake news and bipartisanship that there are a wide spectrum of views, and my thoughts on this movie are not a lone voice in the wilderness. They're not the voice of authority booming from a burning bush. There are other people's opinions to take into account as well, which is why, with that in mind, I've started culling other viewpoints from the Internet Movie Database user reviews. And for Wishmaster, first of all, I want to bring you the thoughts of Cyrus the Spectre. His review is titled Perfect. Man, this movie is dope. Jin is crazy, but sadly the next three aren't up to par. I love the way that in utter chaos the Jin just chills and sips his drink. He's great, and yo, that dog thing is cool too. I just hope the sequels get better. I don't think they do. And from Peter Pants 66. Peter Pants 66 writes, "No sir, I wish nothing. People have said this movie sucks. Well, let me tell you something. This movie did suck. It sucked the oxygen out of the room. For some reason, this film charged up me and my roommates to the point of insanity. Sitting on the edge of our seats going, no, don't make a wish, no! Yeah, it was good. It did for granting wishes what Jaws did for being in the ocean. It's an old tale, I know. Bad genie, bad wishes. Where the thing goes sideways is what happens to these poor bastards. Also, this film is literally loaded like a Gatling gun with horror movie icons. Every 10 seconds you're sitting there, someone walks by. Oh, there's Kane Hodder. Look over there. That's Tony Todd making a bad wish. You would think they knew, but no. And to add to it, we see some real tasty gore. The movie was more comical than scary, which made the horror very nice. See it for yourself and don't skip on the sequel. Just remember, if you're out and a stranger with a coffee cake face asks you to make a wish, do not do it. Unless you're mad clever.